maintaining still some of the flat files system. That should increase the speed. Before I actually start talking about that, though, I have to admit that my primary motivation for giving a talk was to try to force myself into actually doing the work that I'm going to talk about in the talk. And in that regard, I'm only slightly successful. So I managed to do some of it, but I've become too much of a professional procrastinator to be influenced by even giving a talk. So, but we'll see how this works out. The first couple things that I'm going to talk about are just some general bug statistics. I enjoy showing some plots. I'm going to introduce the basic architecture of debugs. Just to back up, debugs is the system behind bugs.debian.org. So if you filed a bug, you fixed the bug, you've wondered what bugs exist, you've interacted with debugs. It has both a web front end and a mailing system. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the new features that have been implemented that you may not know if you haven't followed along, but I'm pretty sure most people here follow along pretty closely, so it might be all old information for you. I'm going to talk about some planned features, especially features that will happen if I suddenly have 2 or 3 more people willing to help. And hopefully will plead with all of you or people who are listening to this talk online or who may listen to this talk recording later to assist me in implementing some of these features. I'm a nice person. We have lots of nice people, and I'd like to see any Perl hackers or CSS hackers or JavaScript hackers or people who want to write documentation help me. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Okay, the goal of the BTS is to report bugs, track the evolution of bugs, fix bugs, and hopefully reduce the impact of bugs, both on maintainers and on users. This is how many bugs we've got versus time. So as you can see, our bug growth is roughly linear over time. It's actually decreasing slightly, but we have a huge number of bugs. People like to track exactly how many bugs we have, and Christian Perrier does some fun contest of guessing when particular bugs might be filed. For example, the 760,000th bug will be filed, I think, September 2nd, and the 800,000th bug will be filed almost a year from now in September 15th, assuming the linear progression maintains itself. So Christian will enjoy that, but he's not here, so maybe he'll see it online. Anyway, that's just showing the bug reporting rate. We average roughly 142 bugs filed a day. And so you can see that's a huge number of bugs. This is the bug closing graph. It's actually technically not bug closures. This is actually bugs being archived. But for the most part, this approximates the bug closure rate with a lag time of about 2 weeks. We close roughly 95 bugs a day. So from that, you can imagine that the bug system is gaining 50 or so some odd bugs every day that are not being fixed. Sort of unfortunately in this graph, you can see that the bug closure rate is decreasing. And in context with the bug reporting rate also decreasing, this is something that I've seen in previous posts that I've made on my blog. This is actually kind of disturbing. I'm not sure what that means for Debian as a whole, whether it means anything, but I'd much rather see the overall rate increasing than decreasing over time. And this graph you're all familiar with. This is RC bugs, which are the bugs that are most important. Luckily, the RC bugs are, those that matter for the next release are decreasing. And so we're getting in line for a new release there, doing okay. And of course, there's always too many RC bugs. Okay, so that was enough fun graphs. Now I'm going to talk about the actual debug system and how it works. So debug's 2 main components. There's a mail backend, which is what to interact with when you email control@bugs.debian.org or submit@bugs.debian.org or a bug number at bugs.debian.org. And that system runs on a machine called Buxtehude, which has all of the files and processes your email. It also, the other aspect of debugs is a web front end. And that's what displays information on what bugs are in which package and the bug logs that you can interact with. And it's also mirrored onto another machine called Beach so that it's ideally slightly faster to interact with. Debugs interacts with DAC, which is the software which is responsible for maintaining the archive. So DAC tells debugs who maintains which packages. So debugs knows who to send email to if there's a bug in a package. It also tells debugs which packages are in which suites, and which architectures. So debugs can calculate whether a bug is present in a particular suite. So, for example, whether the bug affects unstable or whether it's fixed in testing or stable, which is what was calculated in the previous graph I showed you. Brittany also is the testing migration software that migrates software from unstable to testing. It uses information from the BTS as well in regards to whether a package is becoming more buggy or less buggy by upgrading it. So the actual thing that does that is sort of attached to debugs. It's called bug status, and it provides a list of bugs, and it also does the RC bug graphs. But it provides the list of bugs to Brittany. Deadbugs itself looks like this. There's mail comes in. There's spam processing that happens on the first in. We try to throw out as much spam as possible. Lars Barson, who I believe will be here soon, I'm not sure if he's here yet, is primarily responsible for keeping the bug tracking system relatively free of spam and de-spamming the expunging the little bit of spam that actually makes its way into the BTS. He does a largely thankless job, but people who, so if you see Lars, thank him for doing that. It's not a task that I would ever want to take on myself, and so he's done a really great job. Anyway, after the mail has been de-spammed, then it goes through process all, and so process is responsible for handling email that gets sent to submit and email that gets sent to bug numbers. So like if you send an email to 12345 at bugs.debian.org, that's where it goes. Service is responsible for handling all of control. So any email you send to control is handled as service. Now with the advent of control at submit or control at any other time you want to, this diagram has gotten a little bit blurred. There's actually an abstraction that service talks to that process can talk to as well, but that's the basic idea. Then all of the information is stored in flat files in a db-h directory, which has a small hash function to split out the bugs, and is indexed with a couple of flat file indexes, and then the CGI scripts use both the indices and the flat file system to display bugs to users. Okay, so that's how dead bugs looked before I started working on the database. So the current plan is to add on and basically replace the indices with a database layer. And so I'm going to keep parts of the flat file just because that's a well-tested system. There's lots of things that already parse the flat files that know how to deal with it, and add on top a PostgreSQL-based database that the CGI scripts will actually utilize in order to display information to users. This will help both increase the speed at which you get results back if you're looking at complicated packages, and it'll also enable you to do more complicated things like viewing bugs that actually affect a particular version without waiting for huge amounts of time for a query to complete. So for example, if you wanted to look at all security bugs which affect unstable, well, that's actually a really hard query to do without a database layer doing that. And so that's one of the major things that the database is going to do. And so the script that actually handles loading things into the database is called deadbugs load SQL. So deadbugs is written in Perl. So if you don't like Perl, I'm sorry, but Perl has recently come quite a ways in its handling of databases. Most everybody has adopted the Perl idiom of using DBI in order to talk to databases. It's a fairly successful database abstraction layer. But anybody who's ever written code in DBI knows that it's extremely tedious to do joins and complicated statements where you're constantly writing SQL and dealing with escaping and et cetera, or using placeholders, but still, it's something that you have to keep track of. So DBIX class is an extension that gloms together a huge number of Perl modules into a really coherent database abstraction service, where if you give it your schema, it will build classes that enable you to talk to each of the result groups from your database. So it's a complete system. You can actually write a schema entirely in DBIX class that you can then convert into SQLite. You can convert it into PostgreSQL, MySQL, etc. In this case, though, I'm primarily interested in writing for PostgreSQL. That'll actually be the primary database backend. There might be an option eventually to use SQLite for testing, but my primary goal is to deploy to PostgreSQL. I'm also using a bunch of classes that are specific to Debian. For example, the Debian version extension to PostgreSQL that enables you to sort by Debian version, because that's extremely important for the BTS. And that's something that's handled very well in PostgreSQL. So what I've actually done is I write the schema directly in SQL, and DBIX class has an extension called schema loader, which handles converting the SQL schema into the class declarations for DBIX class automatically. So you just write plain old SQL like you're used to, and it automatically creates all of the database related Perl classes that you use to talk to the results from the database. There's another module which handles deployment. So it can do automated upgrades from different schema revisions. So as you change your schema, it handles doing both upgrades and new installs of a new schema, which it can also do downgrades, and you can do other things. In addition to just executing SQL alter statements, you can also run Perl code or anything else you wanted at the database at each upgrade step. So that'll enable much easier changes to the schema in the future. Finally, the actual module in debugs that sort of abstracts this all out is debugsDB. And so all of the database interaction classes in debugs are under that SQL module. So this is the, it's kind of complicated, but this basically tracks all of the bug relationships. It tracks who corresponded with the BTS. It has all the source package versions, binary package versions, and version dependencies. So, for example, when you upload a version that was based on a previous version, this enables all that to be tracked. And I've taken the DAC SQL schema as an inspiration, but unfortunately, the debugs SQL diverges from DAC, and that's maybe something that if I was smart, I would less, but I think it makes sense currently. So, but anyway, if somebody is a PostgreSQL genius or an SQL hacker and is interested in maybe offering suggestions where I could make these more identical, I'd definitely be interested to talk to you about them. Okay, this is actually pretty easy. You just call debugs SQL bugs, and it'll load them. There are two different parts of bugs in debugs. There's the ones that you can actually modify, and then there are the archive bugs. So this handles dealing both with both sets of bugs. You can also load versioning information. This loads which packages are dependent on other ones, and the dev info loads the architecture and source versioning information. So the SQL is actually working. This is an example of a handwritten SQL query, but you could also write this using dbix class. And let me show you that this actually works. Well, in theory here. Okay. Yeah, maybe. Let's see. I always forget how to do this. Yeah. Well, I'll just type it here and I'll show you the results, so that'll be easier. So I can run the select statement, which is just selecting the count of bugs which have been modified since, I think that's June or July, which are not done and, which are, let's see, yeah, which are done and which there's an owner set. And the answer is 521 currently. So, I mean, you could see that's a full load of all the bugs in Debian, and the actual SQL query, I mean, executes fairly quickly. Of course, I'm replicating the same query, so everything's been cached, but it'll give you an idea that it's still relatively quick. Oops. So I had hoped to have more of this done by the time of this talk, but there's still a lot of work that's needed. The log files currently are not loaded, and so the log files are all the correspondence with the bug. And so that's needed to enable full text searching of the BTS. It also currently doesn't do status caching. And so that's what will enable faster loading of the package report page. And then it needs more work on the deployment I actually need to deploy it to the servers so you guys can use it, and it's not just sitting on my development setup. Okay, so that's the major work with SQL, which was the major thrust of this talk. I'd like to talk just a little bit about some of the new changes that have been done. One of the more recent ones is using mail to links. So let's pick a bug here. Let's do this one. Okay, here's a nice bug. So now there is a reply link which includes the subject, the references header, basically everything. So you can click it. It'll open up MUD or whatever your MUA is that handles mail to links. It'll populate the references, the in reply to, and will give you most of the message. The question is, why doesn't the subject also quote the bug number? It probably actually should. I think that's probably a bug. It just quote. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, it probably should quote the bug number. But currently all it does is it adds re to the original subject, and I was really lazy when I did that. But yeah, I should include the bug number in the subject. Anyway, it quotes the original message, and it does that for all of the messages in the bug log. So you can go down and. Is the 2 always the bug number? Yes. The 2 is currently always the bug number when you click on the reply link. No. That's correct. It does not go to the submitter even if you're replying to the submitter. So that's something that, that's another long-standing problem that actually needs to be really fixed, which I'll talk about what needs to be done in order to fix that. Okay. Oops. Other things, these are actually old, well, relatively old. Force merge now does the right thing. You've probably, or you might have seen force merge failing occasionally, but it at least does all the operations that you would have had to do to merge them manually. So it calculates what has to be done, does it all for you. The other major thing is control at submit time, which you send any message, you use control : as the pseudo header, and you write control commands as usual. And at submit time, the bug that you're submitting is -1, or the bug that you're mailing is -1. So you could actually send control commands that influence a whole set of bugs. For example, if you sent the same email to 10 or 15 bugs and used control : reassign -1 to some package, well, you however many bugs that you emailed. So you can actually use that as well to do multiplex control messages if for some crazy reason you wanted to. Okay, this is a set of the future features that I'm trying to work on. Status caching, that'll come as a consequence of SQL work. And so this will also enable you to do reverse status lookup, where you can look up bugs by their status, which you can't currently do. You can only look up bugs in a general thing and then exclude on the basis of the status, which is really slow and not good. One of the other major things that if I ever have enough time, is better statistics. So, I've shown you the plots at the beginning. All those plots are sort of manually generated. I had to generate them before I gave the talk today. It would be much nicer if a huge set of statistics could be generated all the time, hourly, or even up to the minute, so that people can see what's going on with the bugs and who's fixing the most bugs and which packages need more help because their maintainer is not responding, or who's doing a really good job triaging bugs so we can identify them and thank them and promote them. All those sort of things are things that better statistics will help. Some other things. I would like to implement a web-based reporting system, not completely web-based, but at least with submission of bugs using HTTP to some CGI with a report bug or something else as the actual interface to that. And that'll get rid of people having to have a working MUA, report bug doesn't currently require a working MUA, but it or MTA, but it does require that port 25 and 587 work, so you can talk to Bugsmaster. Unfortunately, a lot of people's networks currently don't allow 25, and even more are starting to disallow 587 outgoing. But most people at least allow 80 outgoing. So that's something that will need to be fixed. The major reason why I haven't already implemented that is because I want to make sure that people who are submitting the bugs actually have a working email address. Now, you can mail bugs without a working email address, but at least that requires that you could send mail. So I want to set that up so that people get an email saying, hey, you emailed DevBugs, click this link, and once you do that once, it won't ever ask you again. But that's something that I want to do. Second thing is I actually want to release DevBugs again. DevBugs hasn't had a release outside of experimental, and since the entire time I've been working on it. So, which is a very long period of time, and that's mainly my fault, but yeah, so it'd be good to do that. The third thing that's on this list is bug mailing lists actually in DevBugs. And so this is what's actually going to solve the submitter issue. So the basic idea is that the submitter will be subscribed to a per bug mailing list by default, where they can easily opt out of it. It'll do proper headers and bounce handling. And by doing this in DevBugs, it can also avoid the same person getting the duplicate email. So if you are the submitter and also the maintainer, this will keep you from getting multiple duplicates of the email. If you're also subscribed to the bug list and the packaging list, this will also help a little bit. The packaging email you'll still get, or from the PTS you might still get, but this will at least help reduce the number of duplicates. And it will also enable people to set up defaults BTS-wide. So if they never want to see emails to submitter or to bugs which they've submitted, then they can opt out once and they'll never see them again. Or they can decide later to opt in and they'll be able to see them. Okay, the other one is merged bug reports currently have 2 separate log files, which you don't combine. So anybody who's ever dealt with a merged bug knows that the history of the bug is sometimes difficult to ascertain. You have to go view all the bugs. And if it's 2 bugs, that's annoying, but okay, you could do that. If it's 20 bugs that have been merged, which sometimes happens, it's now almost impossible to figure out which bug has all of the history in it, which one's the most important. So that's something big that needs to be done. Another one is threading in the email, in the bug report view, so you can actually see who's in response to whom. Another major one is user categories currently cannot be easily duplicated or replayed. So if a package has a user category or user tags that you want to emulate, it's really difficult for somebody else to duplicate that unless you keep the email that you sent to the BTS somewhere and modify that. There's no way to take what's currently in the BTS and pull it back out and replay it. So that's actually something that somebody who is interested in helping out could write that up just as easily as I could. So if somebody's interested in working in Perl, that would be a really useful thing to merge. Another thing is remote attachments. There's an RFC that enables you to have email attachments which are not included in the email, which you can obtain remotely. It would be nice to not email out core dumps to people who probably don't want to receive a 20 or 100 meg core dump in their email that they're going to download from the BTS anyway eventually. So if they ever want to look at it at all. So that sort of thing would be very useful. And the CGI needs smarter options so that the query strings aren't as long and they do more of the right thing all the time. Some of these have actually already been done. This is a little old, but there's a lot of places that need help. So if you're interested in helping, and hopefully you, or at least some of you are interested in helping, please get in contact with me. This is how you can actually get started. All of the code running on .debian.org is on bugs.debian.org. Debian branch is the branch that is actually running. Yeah, thank you. So the Debian branch is the branch that's actually running on bugs.debian.org, and you can check that branch out. And the branches are also checked out as well if you just want to browse exactly what's running. If you want to follow what I'm doing, my branch is at git.armstrong.com/deadbugs. And I generally try to keep them in sync with what's on bugs.debian.org, but sometimes I'm running behind. The mailing list is Debian Debugs at list.debian.org. Feel free to email that. You can also email me. I'm don@debian.org. There's also an IRC channel, #debugs, on irc.debian.org, and I'm Don Del Carlo there. So I'm friendly. I'd love to talk to anybody. If you have questions too, BTS isn't working the way you expected it to, versioning isn't going the way it should, feel free to contact me on IRC or email me. And you can also get in contact with owner at bugs.debian.org as well. Owner's the group that runs Debugs. This is the team, and hopefully you will join us. So with that, any questions? I apologize, I'm going to be disappearing relatively soon after this talk, so if you have questions, find me quickly or find me online. I'll be at Burning Man the rest of the week. So, okay, any questions? Or comments or complaints or?
Do you have a performance goal on the update once you have Postgres running?
So I don't have a. I mean, what do you mean, like a?
When you do a query on an individual bug right now, it's usually about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's kind of okay for some things, but if you're doing discovery, it can be really, really onerous.
I mean, it should be less than a second.
Okay.
I mean, especially for, like for individual bug logs. So for viewing an individual bug log, that's a slightly different problem than the database. There's an issue with there because it has to read the entire bug log in order to display it. And I'm working on splitting out the individual messages so the entire bug log doesn't have to be read in order to start displaying it. Yeah, and fortunately, part of the reason why I haven't done that yet is because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. What needs to happen is some sort of Maildir-like thing with some customization that also allows for detached attachments so that you can separate out a very, very large attachment that you're never going to actually display into a separate file. And I'm assuming somebody's invented this, which is why I haven't actually sat down and done it myself. So I've sort of been lazy trying to figure out exactly how that's going to work. But yeah.
Sure. So just quickly, so I've done a lot of work with the historical bug data which you had in there. Is the database going to erase this distinction between archived bugs and non-archived bugs?
So it probably won't erase the distinction, at least as far as emailing goes. So the major reason, okay, so the historical reason for archiving bugs was they were deleted at one point in time. And so then saving them was a brilliant idea. And so they're now, they haven't been deleted in a long time. The other major reason why we archive bugs and why that's actually useful is because it means that they can no longer be mailed. And really old fixed bugs primarily collect spam. That's all that goes to them. So it's quite possible that I'm leaning in this direction that I will disable email to really old bugs. But besides that, they will still be, I mean, you can still do control changes to them and things like that. Exactly, yeah. There'll be basically no distinction between them. I mean, yeah, at least that's the idea. Sorry.
So back to the bug at and bug submitter at. This is something that has caused problems, like people mailing the bug and the submitter not getting, like asking the submitter, could you maybe try something different? And the submitter doesn't get the email. I think the mailing list thing is like a great idea, but it's probably a lot of work. Could it be possible to have a new address like -all or something and get the link in the web page, use this new address so that everyone gets the email?
So yeah, I mean, it would be possible to change it so that, like, emailing the bug number dash submitter would also email the submitter as well as the bug number. Currently, all it does is email the submitter. So this is a change that's been talked about, and I should have just done this already, but I always forget about it. So yeah, so I'm going to change dash submitter to actually email the bug and the submitter no matter what, even if they opt out in the mailing list eventually once that happens. Not separate from dash quiet. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you email, so yeah, so the question or the issue is that emailing submitter sets the reply to dash quiet. Yeah, I'll fix that. That's dumb. The unfortunate thing is there's a lot of things that made sense historically that have changed, and some of the things that deadbugs does, I don't even know that it does because I don't always pay attention to what it's doing. So I'll fix that. I'll try to get everybody.
One thing that I noticed that's a little bit different about how debug works and a lot of other bug tracking systems work is that there doesn't seem to be a way to close a bug as done but not actually done. Like won't fix, like you could do close, but the policy seems to indicate you shouldn't do so. Is there a historical reason for that?
So you can just tag it won't fixed and close it if you're not going to ever fix it. I mean, the major reason to not close it is historical, and it's also because it's easier to discover common bugs that you're not going to fix if they're not closed. But yeah, that's largely a historical thing. I mean, there isn't really a way to say that it's not a bug at all, like the user is mistaken, but you can, just close it in that case with a note. So.
Aside from critical mass of 800,000 bugs, what does debbugs offer as far as distinction from other bug tracking systems, and why do we invest in our own solution? I mean, what is it about debbugs that is unique for our distribution's bug tracking needs?
So this is a really good question. There's two aspects to it. The major one is that it's totally interactable via email, which is a major thing. The absolutely critical aspect, though, for Debian, and why we couldn't use any other BTS system without a lot of work, is that debbugs does versioning. So it knows exactly, assuming that you set up the found and fixed versions correctly, it knows in the version tree which nodes have been fixed and which are not fixed. And so that enables you to figure out whether a package is buggy in testing, whether it's buggy and stable, etc. All that would have to be added on to any other bug tracking system that we used if we were to switch it.
I'd just like to say thanks.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody who had a question? Wave at me. And feel free to ask me as well over email or whatever, or you can even call me if you want. Okay, thank you very much.